Hi, and welcome to our first ever huskersW weekly show. We have many different videos and shows, but this place is going to be where we focus on all things Husker women's sports. So I'm Kelly Green, and joining me is Pat Radigan. We have some fun segments coming up with an interview with a basketball star and a Huskers women's basketball segment. But we're just going to start with some headlines. So Friday marks the beginning of our weekend at the new Devaney Center, which is going to be a very cool facility. What are you most excited for, Pat?
I'm excited to just see the actual game elements because, last time you look at the pregame intros were fun, but they're still doing the choo-choo for Gina. They're still doing some of those things for the alumni and celebrating the alumni. Weren't really familiar with the freshman players and didn't really have anything planned that way. Then we get into the match, obviously you don't want to celebrate anybody getting blocked. You don't want to celebrate too big on one side or the other. So, Coach Cook talked about it. The players kind of talked about how there was a scrimmage and nobody really wanted to be too mean. It was kind of a fun crowd and they were just getting acclimated. But I want to see what the competitive advantage means. I want to see what it means in big points. I want to see if Nebraska's tight in the game, what the crowd can mean. And the Coliseum was one of the smartest sports environments that there was in all sports, not just women's sport, but in all sports I've ever seen. So I want to see how that carries over and how kind of that same magic and some of the gamesmanship of the Coliseum, as well as some of the roof chants, what they come up with, some of the serve chants, just some of those typical things. You didn't really see a lot of it. People were saying, maybe it's lost, but I don't think it's lost. There's too many of the same people from the Coliseum. There's too much tradition to be carried over. So there are some people who and Coach Cook even mentioned this after the match, that said they were kind of hoping that it wouldn't be as good as the Coliseum, but they were blown away that it really was, and they really couldn't say anything negative about it. So when we see it in the game situation, when we see it actually come match time, I think we're going to be really impressed by what the Coliseum has.
And what do you think the new Devaney Center is going to mean nationally, or our place in the conference?
And it's not just what it means and where Nebraska stands in the overall scheme of things and how Nebraska stacks up in the big picture. It's just, men's and women's basketball, they've shared facilities. They have big facilities. There's been some things in women's basketball that are unlike any other women's sports on the NCAA level. But for a sport like volleyball, everybody knows that football is the driver behind every athletic department. And so women's sports have always just strived for that one, their sport, their flagship sport, the one that can generate revenue, the one that can be, you consider it, 90% of all women's sports probably, or even a higher percentage, are considered non-revenue sports and are places that are costing people money. Obviously it's scholarships. You're not really costing when you're providing some of those things. So it's just not operating, business positive. And so when you have somebody like this who can set out and set a facility that's over 7,000 people, that's got the suite level, that's got those different tiers for boosters, for generating funds, for the match club, for the courtside seats. When you have something, you just walk in, it just takes your breath away. Coach Cook has called it an NBA-type facility on more than one occasion. Obviously the NBA arenas are a little bit bigger, but you see that fake wall. You see not the false wall that they put in there for the club seating. You see, you walk in, there's trophy cases that are the columns out onto the court. It's the bar has been set for other institutions, and if Nebraska can find a way to keep pushing here and keep, they can push into the revenue, and they can do things people have never done with volleyball before, not just on the court, not just success, but the business purpose of it. They already have the longest sellout streak of any women's sports ever with Nebraska volleyball. That's already active. But if they can just bring it to a new facility and bring it to that other tier, and then everybody starts competing, and then you see 5 or 6 schools in the next 10 years that have 10,000 plus seats for volleyball, then ESPN rights start coming in. Then you see the fans start booming up all over the country. So these kind of step forwards for some of the flagship programs in women's volleyball can take it to that next level and can show that it's not just a women's sport anymore. It's a college sport. It competes with football. It competes with basketball at some schools. And you could say that there are a lot of Division I schools that might not have as many people at a football game as Nebraska has at a volleyball game. And it's crazy to think that, but that's where they can be, and that's where they're going. And so just to see what they can do to keep pushing the bounds and to keep stretching what other schools and what other programs are offering for women's sports, I think this kind of program, you don't see it anywhere else in any different kind of program besides the women's basketball that shares facilities with men's. So for women's only facilities, it's pretty top of the line.
Absolutely, it's going to be an exciting year. So let's switch over to soccer. We know the women's soccer team had a pretty intense game at BYU. Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, and that's shedding more light on more facilities to come. And we're talking about this again in the wake of the new 2,500 seat facility that's been approved and it's going to be built for the women's soccer team. And this last weekend, they actually, unfortunately, they fell to number 6 BYU 3-0, and it was their 100th shutout at home, their 100th career program shutout. So you never want to be part of any record like that. But the record that they were probably at least excited to play in front of is they had over 5,100 fans there, and they set a record for how many fans were at that game that it's not just in the seats. They were setting up barricades all over. They were setting up ropes. They had standing room only. I mean, one of the girls, and as someone who knows how angry you get when you get scored on playing soccer, I bet it drove Nebraska insane that they did this. But somebody from BYU scores a goal on a free kick and ran over and danced a little jig in the corner in front of student section all around them, just going nuts. And if you don't see that happening in Nebraska, if you can't look at that video, and if you can't see the fans, see the energy, see the level, and compare it to something like the world's largest softball tailgate, and compare it obviously to volleyball and to some of those different things, what they did to fill the Devaney Center to send women's basketball out. And the year they had 12,000 plus, or I don't know exactly the numbers, but sold it out basically for all the Big 12 games when Nebraska women's basketball went undefeated. If you can't see that same energy, that same excitement coming to Nebraska when they have a facility like that, packing it and seeing if they can get more than 2,500 in that facility, and I think that they'll find a way to. I think they'll find a way to make a big event like that, but they have field level seating back this year now that the track's done. It's only a little bit, but it makes the game that much better. And at Nebraska, if they're able to do some of those things, one game year, a packed field kind of game year, and have 3,000, 3,500, increase the amount of people at the games by 5,000 people and sell that place out, it's going to be huge for the program, and I think, again, it's huge for the conference. It's got those same kind of implications for building bigger programs. So if we can bring some of that to Nebraska, instead of just having the NCAA history, having some of the people who have played in the Canadian national team, played in some of those different things. So instead of just having that history, having a history of the game day experience and having their own stadium and drawing regional play, drawing Big Ten tournaments and drawing big numbers, I think you can see it at Nebraska, and just the sign of what you saw at BYU and the enthusiasm you're seeing in other places for women's soccer. I think with a new facility, Nebraska's going to be able to match some of the same kind of stuff.
Right, and one of our own players, Ari Romero, played for the Mexican national team. What does that mean for us? What's going to happen?
And that's kind of going off the same thing that, that's facilities. That's kind of the off-the-field stuff, but Nebraska was also generating some buzz like that. And, a few years ago with Morgan Marlborough in the USA team, and now Ari Romero is the next progression of that. And Katie Kreutner was called up to actually train with the Canadian national team, and like I just mentioned, they've had some people who have contributed on the senior level and contributed to the Canadian national team. But not just the fact she played at the national team, but she's called up, one of 4 collegiate selections, called up and went and played where the Redskins play. It's not just she went and played, and she played on a nationally televised game. I watched all 90 minutes in crystal clear HD with the commentators that I'm used to watching for the men's national team action, and to see her there, I mean, they messed up her name a couple times, and you never really like to lose by more than 5 or 6 goals to nothing. We won't put the actual scoreline out there on her, but to be playing against people who are, and the people she's guarding, and the forwards she's guarding, and the players for the United States are not only the face of soccer in the world, the face of soccer in the United States, but they're building a professional league right now, and they're just wrapping up their first year, and that's going to be huge steps. I mean, if Nebraska, if these big programs are able to feed, from people from smaller countries, from Canadian internationals, from Mexican internationals, from even over to European players, that if they're able to attract this and kind of do the same stuff with tennis. So if they're able to take places, give opportunities to student athletes from other countries and from that that global scene and draw it together into the sport like tennis, like some of those other things, and build women's soccer from the ground up and send them back to their other countries to represent the Olympics, send them in the professional league and build a professional league in the United States that embraces people from all around the world. I mean, there's some Brazilian people, there's some people in Germany now who are major figures in the world of women's soccer. And so if Nebraska, if other Big Ten schools can draw in major talent, that you saw another player from Michigan who was on that Mexican national team, that if some of these bigger schools that have the scholarships, that have the funding, can use these programs to help launch leagues, to help launch the Olympic soccer, to help launch the Women's World Cup. I mean, that's where women's sports is going to be built, is where we have the fan bases, where we have the numbers that we do, like at the Division I level. And so for Nebraska to have individuals like that, and for have people that can be seen as going to be major players in the international and professional ranks the next couple of years, I think it's big, and it goes right along with the facilities. So all signs are that everything's going right for the women's soccer program, and now it's just going to be interesting to see how the next couple of years play out.
Absolutely, and it's going to be an exciting year this year. And we will have many more segments coming and weekly shows, so we are excited to let you in on all things Husker women's sports.
So we'll take a quick break right now, and like she said, we'll be back. We have a look inside the Nebraska women's basketball team's gym and talking a little bit about post-play, and then I was able to sit down with Jordan Hooper and talk about her experience this summer in the World University Games. So we have some fun segments coming up, so we'll take a quick break, and we'll be right back with more of our huskersW morning show. So we're here this morning. We're in the Hendricks Training Complex. We're joined by Nebraska women's basketball assistant Shimmy Gray-Miller. We're going to talk a little bit about the Nebraska Post. Basketball season's right around the corner. You guys know your schedule now. You actually have a year to prepare for. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the Post and what what you've come to know and love from Nebraska Post. So I won't talk too much. I'll just let you set it up for what we're going to see this morning.
Well, now that we finally know our schedule, we took a look at it and we see that we're still pretty much the most undersized team that we're going to face this year. So it's a good thing that we spend all summer working on our basic Sigma moves and our transition series. So right now I'll show you our Sigma series. So when you think Husker Post, you typically think Jordan Hooper, Kelsey Griffin, Emily Cady, Megan Williams, Katie Simon. Those are all undersized post players. So they're more stretch forwards than they are post players. So you've got to envision Neek being 6'5", and weighing, over 200 pounds, which is a typical Big Ten post player. And although Megan is about 6'2" and probably weighs about 160, you might think that that's big for a woman. Well, it might be, but it's actually really undersized for a post player, especially a Big Ten post. So what we do to counter that, because when you go 6'2" against 6'5", typically 6'5" is going to win. I think that's physics. So what we do to counter that are our post players, when they score down in the paint, we have to create space or separation from the defender. How we do that is a basic move that it's called the Sigma move, made popular by Jack Sigma. So all this move is our post player is going to post up above the block always calling for the ball with two hands. Never met a post player yet with one hand big enough to catch the ball. That's just not going to happen. So we post up with two hands, and you'll hear Coach Yori say a lot, show your numbers. So we're going to pretend like Nebraska basketball is really number 10. So I'm going to be out here, and what you'll see is as I make the pass to Megan, she's going to meet the pass. She's going to meet the pass with a 2-foot hop, and by doing that, she's creating space from the defender, and then to compound that with her outside foot, she's going to reverse pivot to create even more space. We'll show you that now. Ball. One more time, Megan. You really look at her feet, and you'll see how she creates the space. Now, what she's done is she's created just enough space for her to be able to get that shot out before a 6'5" can effectively block it, okay? Now, 6'5" has gotten scored over a few times, so now Neek, as the defender, she's going to come out, close that gap, and challenge the shooter. So now what you'll see is we call this a Sigma rip. It's a counter move. Megan is going to rip low, beneath the defender's hands, and then she's going to drive to the basket. Ball. Shot. One more time. Shot. So it's nothing fancy, but as you see, it does require, that she really pay attention to her footwork. Otherwise, she could easily pick up a travel call for this. But this is our basic post inside move.
All right, so now we're going to bring the whole court into the equation. We're going to learn a little bit about transitions. So I'll get out of the way before I do anything too harmful here and just let you guys take over and show us what we got.
When you think Husker Post, you think length, you think long, you think versatile, you think shooters, you think athletic. Those are the post players that Coach Yori finds that fits best into her system because Coach Yori likes to run. That's a huge part of her offense and her identity is the transition game. So therefore, we need intelligent post players who are athletic, that can get up and down the court, and that can also read the defense. It's very typical for a post player defender to run down in transition defense and then just camp out in the paint. That happens a lot. So we want to exploit that. So we'll have long athletic post players like me who are capable of getting off a defensive rebound, kicking it out, up ahead, and then sprinting down the court, stopping at the trail spot, and then reading the deep. What you'll see is we'll do this a couple times, and Neek's job is if she's open, she's got to shoot. She's got to knock that down. And if the defense closes that gap, then she's got to be able to read the defense, shot fake and get to the rim, or else reverse the ball to Pat, where then she would go and set a screen. Okay, so what we call this are stretching the defense, stretching the deep. So we'll see it live in action. Trail! That's two examples of Neek reading the defense. The first time, defense was camped out in the paint. She's wide open, so she takes the shot and knocks it down. Second time, defense makes the adjustment, closes out on her, shot fakes, and she gets to the rim. It doesn't matter if Jordan or Emily, Katie, they miss that shot 9 times. Coach is still going to get on them if they don't take the shot the 10th time. That's why she recruits these guys. She has confidence in them that they can read the defense and then effectively get our transition game going.
And mentioning people like Jordan and Emily, I mean, you see that they love that shot as freshmen. That's where they're their comfort zone. Now you see them hungry to get in the lane, hungry to get to the rim. So it's reps like these, it's all these kind of words of wisdom that guide them along that way. So we've seen that progression, and we're looking forward to seeing more of it in Pinnacle Bank Arena this year. So that's just one of the inside views we're hoping to give you this year as part of huskersW with the women's basketball program, some of the women's sports here in Nebraska. So thanks to you guys for coming in bright and early this morning and putting up with us. But for now, that'll be our last segment here for our morning show. So thanks for joining us for Corn Fed Sports. I'm Pat Radigan. Never be too sure.
Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna make sure it's still recording.
All good?
Yeah,
All
this
set?
will be good.
All right.
Hello and welcome into our second segment here on our Friday morning Corn Fed Sports in the Morning show. As we promised, it's not just Gage and I talking again, so we're joined by Husker women's basketball player Jordan Hooper. We're here on kind of their alternate photo day, so it's just the players having a little fun, doing some glamour shots. So you were doing a cheerleader picture earlier, I saw, right? A toe touch that picture. So there's lots of fun going on here. But Jordan got to win a gold medal this summer as part of the Universidad, or the World University Games, as it's called on these parts. And so we're here to talk a little bit about that experience and moving into your senior year. I mean, has it really sunk in that your senior year is starting in a couple weeks here?
No, it's flown by. I mean, you come in thinking, oh, it's just going to be nice and whatever 4 years, but it's like just when I was a freshman.
And I was at those games. I was at those exhibition games, so it means I'm even older. So that's a little bit worrisome. All right, we'll jump right in. I mean, just the experience. I mean, what was it like from anxious of tryouts to knowing you're on the team to just getting to live up the whole games?
Beginning it was really nerve-wracking for tryouts and everything. I didn't really know where I would fit in, all that kind of stuff. And then training camp, we went back in Colorado Springs or whatever, and that was really fun. We really gelled as a team. We got to know each other, got to know our coaches, all that good stuff. And then when we went to Russia or whatever, it was so much fun. It was a huge experience, and I think it helped me bring back different things, and in basketball mostly brought back a lot of helpful things that I can use this year. So.
And before we get to the nitty-gritty of basketball, I'll ask, because I've actually been to Russia as well recently.
Yep.
I mean, how was it going over there thinking, it's going to be scary old Russia, and it's not. It's kind of happy. I mean, they love the bright color. I mean, they love all that kind of stuff. I mean, what was just that like, that change of impression from what you imagined Russia to be like?
Like you said, I imagined Russia to be so scary, like just weird people everywhere, just like terrifying. But no, it was so cool. The people were really, really nice. They were really welcoming. They were just really cool people, and it was a really cool experience to be around that.
Did you cop out and go to McDonald's at all, or did you avoid your McDonald's
I went there one time for breakfast and then one time for McNuggets because I needed the McNuggets.
There you go, Chest Nuggets. That's what you got, or Chest Nuggets.
Nuggets.
That's where it's at. All right, cool. Well, then, just kind of talking a little bit about basketball, I think this would be the funny part to me is that if you told yourself, 18-year-old Jordan Hooper, that not only are you going to be on Team USA, but you're going to go there and you're going to play defense, and you're going to make a big impact playing defense. I mean, even a freshman year, Jordan Hooper, I mean, what was that like, just finding out that that's where you're going to make your impact and being able to make an impact on the defensive end?
It was different, to say the least, because I really haven't had to use my defense to, play the game that I love or whatever. But, yeah, definitely I had to go there and kind of take on a different role, I feel like, in coming off the bench and then playing defense. And so, but I think that's what I mean by help. It helped me discover more things I can do, not just score the ball. I have different facets and stuff. So it was a really good experience, like I said earlier, but I'm really grateful for it too.
Yeah, and then looking beyond just the meeting on the court and your production on the court, but a lot of times when you see USA basketball, and Coach always talked about it, that the Nebraskas and some of the schools on the fringes maybe give way to some of the bigger schools. So, I mean, what do you think it means for Nebraska? How proud does it make you to be able to say, hey, not only is Nebraska going to the Sweet 16 and done a couple of those things, but you're representing them on the national stage? I mean, do you think that's just the next step in the progression of the Nebraska women's basketball program?
I hope so. I really hope so. Representing not only my state but my country over there, but yeah, definitely it's so cool to be able to represent Nebraska and be from Nebraska, representing Nebraska, not being from somewhere else representing Nebraska. But yeah, it's so cool being from, especially from here, people really don't. They're like, oh, what the heck's Nebraska? Like, what do you do? And it's like, now they don't have to ask that anymore. They can just kind of see what we've done so far in these 4 years or whatnot. So it's really
and
cool.
It's only going to get a little bit better once Pinnacle Bank comes around and once that next step and they see some of the news. So that'll be exciting to see how it goes this next year. Well,
awesome.
We'll get into some more of the fun questions here. I mean, now they're just talking about the breakdown. They could just say it's our senior, but it's our hooper. I mean, it's just you now. I mean, does it feel more like a senior role, or does it feel more like a babysitter role now this early into the year?
This early, it still feels like a senior role. I mean, I don't really do all the babysitting. We kind of collectively keep track of the little freshies, but no, it's a collective effort for keeping track of everything and keeping everything going. It's not just me at all. So I definitely have a huge support group.
Yeah, and I mean, knowing what they're about to go through and knowing what, obviously what college has been like for you, I mean, is there anything you could have asked for, a better kind of mental test yourself with this summer basketball, with USA basketball? I mean, how much can you take from that to kind of show them that, hey, there are challenges that, you just kind of stick to it and stick to your guns like you learned yourself?
Yeah, I mean, with USA basketball, I definitely, I've told them about it, like, it wasn't the same as it is here. Like, it's totally different when you're put in a different role and everything. And so I think then the freshman coming from high school into college, it's going to be a transition, and you just have to get used to whatever role you're put into and whatever you need to do. And coming from high school to college, I honestly, I don't wish I would have known anything I didn't know, because I've grown from the ways that I have learned, and I'm really happy with my growth. So.
From seeing the fact that you were kind of scared to walk in front of the press conference in your first ever game to now the fact that you're doing some of the stuff out here at the photo shoot, I think we can see the